Session 1 features the reader response approach to teaching and learning. Greg Hurst's students on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation respond to James Welch's literature about contemporary Native American realities through a series of reading and writing activities.
This process of expansion and contraction is further refined when students take their initial responses from the text and articulate those ideas in one crisp thought, clearly expressed in writing.
I need someone who has one good, clear sentence overall. The medicine woman gives birth to children on Christmas and gives them dreams.
The early poems were important in the way in which they informed the novels. Welch said one time that when he was doing the poems, they were like snapshots, and he wanted a bigger picture, a large landscape. So he moved on to novels. The poems are echoed in various ways, sometimes in a fairly one-to-one relation, where a type of character emerges. So it's the natural kind of thing to pair up certain poems with the novels when you teach them.
Okay, welcome back. As you know, we're into our last day of our session. We have two things to do this afternoon, moving into the end of our session on James Welch. We're going to focus today on the death of Jim Loney. Now, I'm going to talk about Jim Loney for a few moments, and when I talk about Jim Loney, I need you to put in your mind a Jim Loney character that you know. And every one of you know many Jim Loneys. So on this sheet of paper, very briefly, let me just put up a couple things that happens in the novel that are important before this passage that we look at. So if you'll jot these down with me, please, on your paper. Number one, Jim Loney's life is outlined in the first part of this. And the first thing we need to know about Jim Loney's life is his young life. What do all young Jim Loneys do when they're in school?
They play sports.
Sports. He was good in sports. Very good in football, I might add. So even though this novel is Jim Loney after high school, much later in his life, in his 20s, he still is reliving his high school sports. I want you to think again of the Jim Loney you have in mind. You know, that type of person on the reservation who was once good in basketball, once good in football. That might have been the last time he was good in something, so he continues to relive those moments, especially when he has a few.
Rather than try to deal with the entire novel in one session, I need to summarize for the students what's happened in that novel up until that moment when Jim Loney begins to confront his own demons, and then ask students to create or envision or dream his ending.
So in your minds, when you have your Jim Loney type, envision that type of character. Jim Loney is a mixed blood, which means he's part Gros-Ventre and he's part non-tribal. We're very honest. We're not looking for a happy ending here. We're not looking for a social worker who's going to come in and make it all right. We're not looking for a big check from Washington. We're looking for people who have the courage to look at the life right in the face, accept it as it is. And that's what Welch wants us to do. Would you look where I have underlined there on 146? I killed a man, said Loney. His mother and the social worker were gone now, wiped clean from his mind. Ike looked up from the radio. Over there on 147, I need someone with a good, clear voice to finish that passage.
I killed Pretty Weasel, said Looney. I shot him with a 30-30. I thought he was a bear.
The Death of Jim Loney is a very important novel in Native American literary studies because it's mythopoetic in my estimation. Early critics of the novel and reviewers saw it as so full of despair. I've never believed that. When he takes the responsibility on himself, he stopped being a child of the government or an innocent noble savage or all the other things that he's mistaken for in the novel. At that point, he becomes a man. And the good thing about the novel is, despite its despair, people can read it on so many levels.
Now, to deal with the rest of this passage so you understand this moment in the novel, since you're going to write the ending, what I'm going to do now is put you in groups. So what I want you to do now is, with your group, please take a moment and discuss this passage and decide as a group why you think this happened. Why did he kill a man, in other words? Why did he kill a man he's known all of his life on the reservation? What I want you to use as your background is what you know about Jim Loney and what led up to this.
He probably, their family had something against him or something, and he could have been drunk and not realized what he was doing. And I think overall we should just go with that his family had something against him and he got drunk and didn't know what he was doing and shot the guy.
He just kind of burst and shot somebody.
Let's think through this. What might be the reason that this happened at this point in the novel?
Because Jim got drunk.
He got drunk, the first thing, okay?
And then Pretty Weasel went with him, and then he got drunk too, and then they went hunting, and then Jim accidentally shot him because he thought he was a bear.
If you teach a work like The Death of Jim Loney, what kind of context does the student need? I think that's a very important question for a teacher. Someone off the reservation perhaps only sees it as a book about a half-breed drinking. That's dredging up the worst kinds of stereotypes.
I guess he was drunk and he wanted revenge. Or he might have had problems with his father or his sister.
Back to something about money or something.
Jim Loney is trying to find some kind of dignity in living. He's awakened after 10 years of alcoholism to realize his life is meaningless. So in the end, he is the most alert, alive, conscious person.
Now, what I'm going to need you to do, we're going to do a little bit of movement here. I want these groups to be very tight. Group 1 here, if you need to have one person come around in front, let's do that now. Group 2, I need you to move in very tightly together. And I need you to draft as a group. Same thing here with group 3. I need you to draft as a group your ending. So as you go through this, you need to talk through this ending. Get one person to be your secretary. The rest of you give your secretary the ideas and get down your ending. Same thing with group 4 and group 5. Now, we're doing 2 things in your group. We're talking and writing, talking and writing. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to give you about 10, 12 minutes to draft your ending of this novel.
I think instead of going to the bus station or wherever he was going to go and drive away, I think he should just drink away the money. And get violent and have the tribal cops. He should bring that gun. He should bring his and just set it on the table and ordering a beer, and everybody gets out of the bar scared.
Either that or say his sister's a lawyer or something. Yeah. And he can ask her to come help her or help him or something.
Or he could run away and then have his sister take over.
Or Rhea's the one that shot Pretty Weasel, and she's trying to get rid of Jim by throwing him in jail.
That'd be a real different ending, but
he could get drunk and commit suicide.
Just tell police it was an accident and get let off.
yeah, just fess up. Yeah, maybe his sister could help him turn his life around. But maybe he didn't really kill Pretty Weasel because he was drunk. He wouldn't have known anyways.
I think it's important to have students think about the ending of that book. It is the most important part of the book. Did he have to die that way? Why not give this young man a chance? It's kind of the notion of self-consciousness about who the Indian and American imagination is. So a teacher in a classroom needs to get the students to think about that, think of other endings, but leaving the art of it kind of in place.
And then maybe he could turn his life around if he wanted to go for a happy ending.
Yeah, all he did was get a big scare.
He decides to run away from
the cops?
Yeah, into the forest.
They could have the cops found the body and they could have linked it to him from
The shells.
Poetic justice.
When students are in small groups, they are discussing their understanding of the story up to that point. They have to discuss his character, his motivations, his history. Their task is then to negotiate among themselves what they think is going to happen to Jim Loney. And by collaborating, they discover what they think the ending of this story is going to be. They are responding to the literature and creating their own text.
Okay, would you get quiet, please? Now we're moving into our reading. This is the ending of the novel. Each group is going to read their ending. I'm going to start over here with group 2, and Danny will read your ending of how you see the novel, The Death of Jim Loney, ending based on everything we've done today and yesterday.
Just as Jim was leaving town, he notices Pretty Weasel walking by with his arm in a sling and bandages around his arm. He soon finds out that he actually did not kill Pretty Weasel, but just injured him. Jim then decides that after that big scare in his life that he needs to start to turn his life around. Jim soon goes to his sister, and his sister helps him find a job.
Welch asks us time and time again to deal with everything that's on a reservation. In this case, all of our demons. And students do that readily. They can create those images, but we have to do something with them.
Jim Loney takes the money and goes to the bar, already intoxicated. As he approaches the bar, he takes out a gun and sets it down gently on the counter. He then orders a Bloody Mary, and the bartender turns around and drops the shot glass he had.
I want students to take that next step where they make their images, which they have painted, add up to something.
Well, he gets out the door, and the tribal cops shoot him down, killing him instantly.
Very well done.
I want them to resolve through their ideas what Jim Loney's fate is going to be based on images of reservation life that we have.
Jim was still having a hard time dealing with the fact that he had killed someone. It seemed so unreal. The cops found the body. A farmer had reported it. By the time the cops had linked it to Jim, he had fled to the Little Rockies. While Jim was hunting, another hunter accidentally shot him, mistaking him for a deer. He then died instantly from the shot entering his left lung.
Should you have a seat, please? Will you stand, please, and read your part? The rest of us are listening very carefully.
Okay. Jim takes the gun from his father and escapes to the Little Rockies. But after a year, he comes home, and the police have been waiting for him, so his dad tells him right before the cops get to him.
After students have shared their own endings to the death of Jim Loney and responded to each other's writing, they can rewrite the passages, incorporating the feedback. Finally, they can read the actual ending of the novel and compare and contrast their writing with the author's vision.
We worked with our writer, who was James Welch, and today you read his words. You then came up with your ideas, your vision of what Jim Loney would be, and then finally you put together your ideas of his ending. And I am pleased with our results. Once again, thank you and have a very good day.